specifically talking about coaching our athletes and starting your program, a couple of things you want to make sure to go over before you start your season is proper uniforms for whatever the sport is that you're looking to coach. So with soccer, softball, those uniforms are provided by the state office. Make sure that you either have your uniforms from previous years, or if it's something that you've put in on your budget, that you contact us and get those orders taken care of early so that we can get those in time for your competitions. Some things that do need to be provided by the athlete, they're listed in the uniform standards. For example, shin guards, that's an individual item that you want your athletes to take care of. If there is a huge financial burden, you can always talk to us and we can see if that's an option, but that's something that the athletes should really be taking care of themselves. In all our sports, we want to make sure that they have proper shoes. So whether that's for track and field, if they're interested in doing just a really good running shoe, or if they want to be more competitive and get into a cleat, making sure that they have something that fits them and that's going to support them the best. We want to make sure we really stay away from any sort of sandals, Crocs. We've seen cowboy boots, other sorts of boots. We want to make sure that they've got the proper shoes that are really going to be able to support them. Velcro is generally a bad idea because it tends to pop off and causes problems when they're running. So making sure that each of your athletes has a proper pair of shoes and that they're ready with that at the beginning of the season so they can be practicing in that before their competitions. Also with uniforms, especially with track and field, you want to make sure that we get our orders in for the t-shirts early enough so that they have those for not only the state event but for the area events as well. And that they have proper attire if they're wearing athletic pants or shorts, that they know exactly what they run the best in and feel comfortable in. Also, we want to make sure that if there is an athlete that has a problem with pants staying up on them, that you take care of that as well. A great option for that is just using a pair of suspenders that'll help them keep up their pants or their shorts, whatever they're choosing to wear. Also important that you go over the uniform standards as far as what the athlete needs to provide themselves, what will be provided for us, and what is expected. So with soccer, they are expected to have matching socks. So making sure that either your team already has that, or that that's something that you put in for your budget, and that is something that is a uniform standard for all of our teams. With your training programs, before you start, it's a great idea to talk to your athletes about nutrition and fitness as well. There's many different resources that we have available online that you'll see underneath our training link. Specifically, we've got guides on athlete nutrition, safety, and fitness. And it talks about going through some of the basic things with your athletes, talking about healthy diets, getting them active when they're not only at practices, but outside of practices as well. Making sure that water is a really important thing. It's a great thing to start early to tell your athletes just to bring that water bottle to practice so they know that they have to have that with them and they're always reminded to be able to drink water. It's a big thing that we see, especially at summer games, is the dehydration, just because athletes are thinking, oh, I'll just drink this soda and I'll be fine, instead of being constantly reminded to have that water with them. So it's a great thing to start at the very beginning of your practices. A few other things with athlete nutrition and safety. Encouraging your team as a group to do activities together that will promote fitness is a great way to not only bond them together, but to promote fitness and to keep them active and healthy. Also making sure that they are safe when they're at practices and competitions. So before you start your practices, it's a great idea if you're out on a field, you're on a softball field, you're on a soccer field, you're out on a track area, to check the area, making sure that you know that there isn't any debris. Sometimes there can be garbage, other things that can be dangerous. With a field, making sure that you go around and know where there's any divots, potholes, any large rocks, so that you can prepare your athletes so they know what to avoid and keep them safe while they're at practices. Another thing with safety is making sure that they are prepared before they start practice to be able to compete safely and practice safely. So a good warm-up, good stretching, and encouraging that they do that on their own as well, so that they are able to compete at their highest level and not injure themselves. There is a sports safety and risk management packet that's also available online that goes over some specifics of what to watch out for and what, as a coach, that you need to be watching for as far as safety and risk management goes. Also, as we head into the summer season, it's a great reminder to be able to watch for making sure that your athletes are taking care of themselves in the sun. So not only that they're keeping themselves hydrated, but they're also wearing appropriate clothing or bringing hats, things like that, to protect themselves from the sun, and of course always applying sunscreen. So it's a great thing to start at your practices so that they know when they get to competitions that that's going to be expected, so that they can help protect themselves from the sun. Specifically with rules and coaching techniques for each of our sports, although it varies from sport to sport, a couple of basics still apply. You want to make sure that when you go into your practice that you have a plan of what you're going to do. So not that you just show up and go over the things that you're going to do at a competition, but you have a plan of what skills you're going to work on, where you're going to start at, maybe some specific drills you're going to run that day, or even some fun games that you can incorporate that'll encourage fitness and also be applicable to your athletes in their competition. There are several, not only the assessment forms that you use for registration, but there's assessment forms for track and field that help you see where your athletes are at and see where they're struggling. So if you know your athletes are having problems with starting, that maybe you specifically dedicate most of your practice one day to starting and running drills that'll help you work on starting problems. Or if they have problems with endurance, that you're running drills that'll help with the endurance. So it's a great tool to use to make sure you know where your athletes are at, and then assess them later on and see now where their skills are at and where you need to be focusing your practices on. So with planning your training program, it's a great idea to take a look at our coaching guides. So these are available all online through SpecialOlympics.org. If you click on Our Sports, you can click on whatever sport it is that you're looking at and see the rules. Make sure that you're getting the most updated rules. So a few of the sports have come out with new rules in 2014. And then looking at the coaching guide as well. So going over the rules to make sure not only you know the rules, but you're teaching your athletes the rules too. You want to make sure that even if it's something that they're following, that they know that that's a rule. So if something happens at a competition, they know why they might be asked not to do that, or if there's a penalty or a disqualification, that they know that that is a rule. Especially with track and field. Things like running in a walking race, even if it's for a step or two, things like that can cause disqualification. You want to make sure your athletes know that, even if you might not see them doing it at a practice, but they know that that could be a possibility. Also with lane violations. So as they're running, they may travel into a different lane. We obviously want to encourage them to stay in their own lane. If they do go into a different lane, as long as they're not impeding another runner or gaining any sort of advantage, they will not be disqualified. But if it's seen as something that could have been impeding another runner or giving them some sort of advantage, they will be disqualified for that. So we want to make sure that our athletes know those rules so that they can be following those. With the training guides, these are great ways this is specifically for soccer. It not only goes through some specifics on the sport about how to train your athletes in the game of soccer, but it gives specifics in different drills that are available, and even provides video links so that you can see exactly how those drills are done. It talks about sample practice plans. It gives different ideas for drills, different ways that you can run your practice so that you're giving your athletes the best experience for preparing them for competition. So that's available on SpecialOlympics.org, and it's available for each of the sports that we offer. So taking a look at those, specifically the Quick Start Guide that's available in the back of each of the training manuals will give you a nice, simple, shorter guide to how to run your practices, different things that you can do, and great ways to prepare your athletes for competition. So a few specifics with track and field, specifically with some drills for track. You want to make sure that you're working on whatever skills that they're needing the most help with. So as we went through a couple of drills in our last training, we worked on starts. So we want to make sure that all of our athletes know the commands for starts, making sure that we're going over those specifics in the rules and that they're practicing with the sound, and also knowing that they are only allowed 2 false starts before they're disqualified. So going over those different details with an athlete and what a disqualification looks like, what a false start is, talking about their stance when they start, where their weight is on their feet, and then going through a few drills, getting their high knees, going through it with them. So maybe a coach can walk alongside of them and making sure they're just walking, doing those high knees, then getting quicker and doing a quicker high knee movement, and working on those different elements that are going to help them with their start. They can run through a drill where they go about 30 yards and then jog it back and reset and try that again. And then as you get farther on in your training, going over conditioning and actually having them run the race and compete against each other. So they can not only see how they react when there's someone else running alongside of them, but then they can time themselves and making sure that they're always improving on those times and seeing how far they come. With the throwing events, you want to make sure, specifically with the tennis ball throw and the softball throw, that they are working up towards those, the turbo jab and the shot put. So as they're working on those skills, that they're not just focusing on throwing it as a tennis ball or a softball, which they can throw it in any way. So they can throw it underhand, overhand, any way that works best for the athlete. If they are throwing the softball throw beyond 25 yards, they need to be moved up into a shot put event or a turbo jab. They cannot participate in a shot put and a turbo jab, as well as a tennis ball or a softball throw. They can compete in a shot put and a turbo jab, but not one of those in combination with the tennis ball or the softball throw. With the softball throw, if they are throwing beyond 25 yards, start having them throw the softball as a shot put, coming from the shoulder and using that technique, and seeing if that brings them down in their distances, or if they're still throwing beyond 25 yards, to move them up to that shot put event. With shot put, you're making sure that your athletes are using proper technique, that they're putting it right along the jawline, keeping their elbow out and keeping the shot put nice and close to them. Their thumb should be underneath, and the weight of the shot put should be on the fingertips and not on the palm of the hand. There are several different methods in the track and field coaching guide, the quick start guide, about the approach to the shot put, and making sure whatever works best for your athlete is being used. Then as they release, making sure that they follow through and using proper technique and flicking the wrist to making sure they're using their maximum power in getting that shot put. With turbo jab, it's also important that they're getting that maximum effort, so they're focused on what they're doing in their approach and making sure that they're using all of their momentum moving forward, and that they're keeping the turbo jab nice and close to their face in a straight line. That'll help them with their precision and making sure that all of that energy is going forward versus allowing it to rotate. So keeping it nice and close to their face, pointing with their opposite arm, and then following through with their throwing arm all the way through where they've pointed to. After completing the online sport-specific course, you can now be certified as a coach in that specific sport. Make sure to complete the certification certificate and complete the requirements on there for your mentored or your 10-hour of practicum. Once that's completed, turn that form into the state office within 1 year of completing this course, either in person or online, and you'll be able to be certified for that specific sport. Those certifications last 3 years, so make sure to renew your certification for that sport every 3 years. If you have any questions about trainings or any questions about getting your team registered for a specific sport, make sure to contact your area coordinator, or you can call the main office at 801-363-1111.